It's another day, left jab, right jab, this is MMA. Mixed martial arts, quick body parts, undefeated when I pick 'em. Who the champ, who the victim, looking in my crystal ball, I predict the winner. Never stop fighting, if you lose, keep your chin up. Know how the game go, I'm a smart fella. Welcome to the show, this the MMA fortune teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
What is up, you guys? UFC 261. We got 3 title fights on the horizon here. Fights taking place here in the great state of Florida, and of course, you guys know it. You know the event is open for fans, and it's full capacity. It's already sold out. Obviously, it sold out a while ago as soon as the tickets went for sale. So you know this makes this event a little bit extra exciting compared to the ones we've been watching over the last year or so. Not to mention we got some awesome fights. The card is a little top heavy for sure. You know, this card is mostly centered around the main card, in particularly you know, these 3 title fights. But other than that, I think you guys will be quite surprised or quite impressed with some of the undercard performances. You know, breaking down footage on a lot of these fighters. A lot of these guys bring it. You know, a lot of these guys are looking to make a name for themselves in the game right now in the UFC, and they're exciting fighters. A lot of Asian fighters. You know, the UFC. It seems that they've been doing this as of recently, although they're not able to travel all around the world as they normally do. What they're doing now is they're still making this as if it was a card that was in Asia. You know, you got of course you got Zhang, and one of the more featured fights on this card, and they brought over a lot of Asian-based fighters as well, and a lot of those fighters are really exciting, so we'll be talking about them here in a minute. Let's see what else. Definitely got to recap this past weekend. It was a good one. I'm going to start things off with the Ben Askren versus Jake Paul fight. For those of you guys that caught my breakdown and prediction video, you guys know I was on Jake Paul. I did think that Jake Paul would win this fight. A lot of you guys gave me some slack about that, being that, of course, you know, I'm on the MMA side of things, but at the end of the day, I wasn't going to go with Ben Askren. You watch him hitting the pads, then you watch Jake Paul hitting the pads. I know what I was looking at, and Jake Paul's a guy that has some nice hands. You know, he has some decent hands. And Ben Askren's a guy that's really never shown to have any type of hands in his entire mixed martial arts career, and I didn't see anything that impressed me leading up to this fight that was going to show that he evolved with his boxing and whatnot. I did not buy in, and I was not that surprised that we saw what we saw. Jake Paul threw a nice right hand. I know Askren keeps referring it to as this looping right hand, but it was a pretty nice nice right hand. It was almost, you know, straight down the pipe. You know, I guess a little bit of a loop to it, but still, you know, it was a nice punch, put Ben out. And I think it was a justified stoppage too. If you actually run the tape back, look at Ben Askren, he was definitely wobbling. So my first thought when I saw the fight was, oh, that's an early stoppage, but it really wasn't. Ben Askren was wobbly, and you know, that was some money there to be made. You know, at a minus 155, line wasn't bad. Now, in regard to official plays this weekend, we had 7 official plays, and they started with Bellator's 257. I also threw the prediction video in there with the Jake Paul and Ben Askren, you know, prediction video. I mixed them up together. Went 2 for 2 on the Bellator card, and I'll recap this real quick. We'll talk about these top fights. I was on Paul Daly, got him at a great line, right around minus 185, minus 190, had some action on him, and Paul Daly, although he did start off slow, like he said, he kind of underestimated Sabah Hamasi. You know, once things settled down, he was clearly the better fighter, which is what I definitely thought going in when I was breaking down tape. I will say this, my respect level for Sabah Hamasi has definitely went up. He looks like he's still evolving as a fighter, training over at American Top Team. The guy is a serious fighter, and Paul Daly was too relaxed in there and got caught early. If you guys didn't catch this fight, I highly recommend you guys do. It was one of the more exciting fights we've seen in some time. That first round was one of the more exciting rounds I've seen. It was very reminiscent to the Nick Diaz versus Paul Daly first round. Paul Daly did the stinky leg. He got dropped. It was back and forth action. But like I said, once Paul Daly got his wits, you know, that was it. You know, so Hamasi kind of gassed out, and Paul Daly put a clinic on him, got the finish there in the second round. So that was a nice little fight to cash in on. Veda Arteaga, I told you girls, you know, watch out for the grappling against Dirty Desiree. You know, watch that would be the X factor there. So she got some takedowns, she won the fight. Corey Anderson pulls off a nasty finish there in the third round. You know, I want to say something, you know, in regards to that fight there. You know, his opponent was a tough fighter. He was very capable. I think what you saw in that fight was almost a little bit more so a major size difference. You saw the difference of the size of them inside the cage. Corey Anderson was the much bigger guy. And although, you know, Yaga Shamirodov was, like I said, a very capable and tough opponent, that size difference was just starting to wear on him, and eventually he couldn't stuff the takedowns and he got brutalized. Then, in the main event, my last play of the card here, as I said, I went 2 for 2. I was on Vadim Nemkov. He takes out Phil Davis once again. I thought there was a lot of good things pointing towards Nemkov's direction in this rematch here. I know they went to a split decision the first time around, but Nemkov has been putting it together. He still hasn't hit his peak in the game. I think Phil Davis is kind of on the decline, although he looked good. He looked good in this fight. But as far as I was concerned, that was money that was on the table that I was going to pick up, and that's what I did there. So a great start to the weekend there on Friday night. Obviously, we had the big card Saturday night that you know, the UFC put on for us. That was also going down at the same time as the Askren versus Jake Paul fight card. I had both of them going at the same time. I had Askren and Paul on the laptop. I had Whitaker and Gaslam throwing down up on the big screen. And you know, I'll recap this card real quick and a couple little things we could talk about. Tony Gravely, I had him mixed in a parlay. Showed up. This guy is the real deal. Division I wrestler, has the Taekwondo experience since he was a young buck. Now you see the power in his boxing. Keep an eye on Gravely. Austin Hubert shows up. You know, I thought the experience in the UFC would be a little bit too much for Dakota Bush. Hubert's a very fighter that's very calm in the chaos inside the cage. He's relaxed in there, and he's doing his thing right now. He's mixing it up. He looks good. I did have a small play on Bartosz Fabinski. You know, got caught with that choke there, and we didn't really get to see that fight play out. But as I stated, I kind of thought the fight would go this way or that way. You know what I mean? If Meerschaert caught him early with the submission when they were dry, I could see that happening. Fabinski goes in for the takedowns. I was hoping Fabinski would have avoided the early submission and let them get sweaty, and I guarantee you Fabinski would have been the one grinding Meerschaert out there. Also, I thought there was a little bit of an X factor, which Meerschaert's chin, but it was the smallest play of the card for me. Was nothing really there. Okay, Lupita Godinez. I had her mixing that parlay there. You know, with Gravely. I thought she won that fight. Basically, everybody I saw online thought she won that fight. I think it was a little bit of a robbery. It was somewhat close, but a little bit of a robbery there. So obviously, I was disappointed there. That parlay should have definitely hit. Alexander Romanov was my next play that did hit. Kind of a weird fight there. You know, I don't think he should have won the fight the way that things went with the low blow, and they were supposed to go to the judges' scorecards. Espino got the early takedown in the third. But it was kind of karma at the end of the day. I don't know. Depending on how you look at it, it was 1-1 going into the third. We didn't get to see that third round take place. Romanov looked really nasty in the second round. And I'm still very high on both those guys there. I think they got to run that back. And, you know, Espino hit him in the nut. He hit him in the nuts. And, I don't know, maybe did Romanov milk it a little bit? I don't know. I had a little small play in Alex Munoz. The split decision bit me in the butt here again, right? I thought maybe he did enough to win those first couple rounds of the takedowns and whatnot. Pena looked good though too, man. Pena looked crisp with the striking, so it was a close fight. Another small shot at a dog there. I had a major play on Tracy Cortez. The split decision, I get the split decision there. I don't think that should have been a split decision. I thought she won that fight pretty handily. That put some good money in my pocket. How about Jacob Malkoun showing up, exploiting the grappling of Al Hassan? I think Al Hassan is in big trouble moving forward. There's a recipe to beat him, and a lot of these guys are going to know what to do now after seeing that. Andre Arlovsky takes out Chase Sherman, and you know, that's what he does. He takes out these guys that are not as experienced as him and not really on the level, and he's still hanging around way up there in age. Bobby Knuckles takes out Kelvin Gastelum. This is what I want to talk to you guys about here. You know, Bobby Knuckles looks amazing in this fight here. You know, is he next for the title shot against Israel Adesanya? I kind of feel that's probably the right thing to do right now. I mean, he was the ex-champ. You know, he's been, you know, really showing up ever since that loss. I mean, I know Marvin Vettori's really been doing his thing too. I would love to see a fight between Whitaker and Vettori, but one of them I think has to get the shot now against Izzy. Izzy's ready to fight. I know that. So which one of these two do you want to see Izzy fight next? I would love for you guys to comment below and let me know. Love reading your guys' comments. Please do let me know who's next for Izzy. Is it Whitaker or Vettori. I think it's probably Whitaker after the performance he just put on. And again, an amazing performance. So overall, we go 4 for 7 on the weekend. So another profitable weekend for us over here. We move on to the next card, and that is UFC 261. Like I said, 3 big fights at the top of the card. And with no further ado, let's get right into UFC 261. So as stated, this event is open to the public. It's going to be at max capacity, full capacity. It's taking place in Jacksonville, Florida. If you guys are wondering why I'm not going to be at this event, just wasn't able to grab a ticket in time, kind of slacked on that. You will start to see me at a lot of these events moving forward, especially over the next couple months here. So excited for that. But again, taking place in Jacksonville, Florida, and we're going to have fans in attendance. So I'm very excited for that. Like I said, of course, we got the 3 championship fights. We also got Chris Weidman taking on Uriah Hall. Crute versus Anthony Smith is a nice fight. Couple fights here mixed up. You know, as we get towards the beginning of the card, some lesser known names, but like I said, very exciting tape on all these fighters. So I think these fights will play out to be exciting, and a lot of Asian-based fighters. I mean, all 4 fights to start the card off are with, you know, Asian-based fighters, the 3 Chinese fighters and the 1 Mongolian fighter. So you know, it's good to see that part of the world is really grooming some top-level talent. We'll get into the first fight here. We got Ariane Carnelossi taking on Na Liang. Carnelossi, a very physically imposing female fighter. She made her UFC debut against Angela Hill. That's a tough fighter to step into the octagon for your first bout against. She was stopped in the 3rd round. She was cut up. She was beat up in that fight a little bit. She looked kind of strong in the beginning. Like I said, a very physically imposing fighter, very muscular. She has power. We've seen her early in her career, you know, knock girls out. We've seen her use her wrestling, you know, rip some girls down to the mat, you know, get some takedowns there. So a very physically imposing fighter. And then on the other hand, you got Na Liang, who I was very surprised, you know, when I was breaking down tape on her. This girl is a ferocious fighter. She has the nickname Dragon Girl. I think that's somewhat fitting. And I say I'm surprised in the sense that, you know, you don't see, or at least, you know, the narrative on Asian-based fighters, especially Asian-based female fighters, you don't really talk too much about their grappling and their ground and pound and their submission games. Well, the submission games, as you could say, but you don't really see a lot of them with the wrestling and whatnot. And Na Liang, you break down tape on her, at least in some of her fights. Again, take into consideration the opponents she's fighting against, but even she's in there looking like Khabib at times, you know what I mean? Just scrambling, getting takedowns. You know, the fighters are going for submission. She's pulling out. She's smashing them. You know, it was actually decently exciting to break down her tape, and I'm excited to see how she performs here. You know, and this is a girl. You know, she's going to be coming in right 5'9" with a significant height advantage, a significant reach advantage. Only 24 years old, and that's something you're going to notice too with a lot of these Asian fighters, a lot of these Chinese fighters. For whatever reason, you're seeing a lot of them making their UFC debuts or fighting in the UFC to start their career off at very young ages. I think a lot of these fighters have been training the martial arts in general from a very young age. I think that over in China, I think that's a little bit with the culture and with the specific Chinese fighters that get involved in MMA, they take it very serious. They don't mess around in China. This isn't like in America, somebody that's just kind of training MMA, this and that. I mean, they take it serious over there. They have these academies and whatnot. And then they do that with a lot of their sports. You know, you look at a lot of the Chinese athletes in the Olympics. I mean, they've been training since the moment they're born. So, you know, I think that's why you're seeing them very polished up at such young ages. So again, Na Liang has decently impressed me with the fight tape I saw of her. She's coming in on a 4-fight win streak. You know, and pulling off a lot of submissions as well, pulling off a lot of arm bars in particular. And one of the fights I broke down too, I think this was the fight here against Mengan Liu. But, you know, again, brutalizing the opponents too. It wasn't like she just caught some arm bar that, you know, she was slick and pulled off an arm bar. I mean, really beating these girls up and then putting herself in position with the arm bar by just beating them down. So, yeah, very, very interested to see how this fight goes down. Ariane Carnelossi, again, a very physically imposing fighter, the tough Brazilian fighter, coming off the loss to Angela Hill. But again, one of the top female fighters in this weight class in the world. And before that, she's been handling business, been going in there, like I said, knocking girls out, using her wrestling, you know, to beat up girls and whatnot. Will she be able to go out there and impose herself here on the Chinese fighter. You know, I don't know. I kind of want to see this fight play out. You know, I think the line is a little bit off. Cornelossi right now, you take a look at the live line, right around a -185 with money coming in on her. I think that line is high in my opinion. As high, especially as high as -200. I think that's kind of a high line. I wouldn't feel that comfortable taking her there. Although I'm gonna pick her to win the fight overall, I think this fight could play out closely. And just keep an eye on Liang. She's an exciting fighter. And this fight may play out a little bit more closely than some people are speculating. But yeah, I'm gonna pick Cornelossi. I think she could use her wrestling and whatnot, and use her power shots to kind of to impose her will there. And I think that those power shots may be enough for her to kind of impose her will and take a decision there. Maybe get a stoppage even. We'll keep an eye if she can get a stoppage. Maybe she hits her with a big shot, cracks her to the body a little bit. If she mixes things up too, I would like to see Cornelossi mix some things up, not just headhunt. She does carry power, and hopefully she can, her cardio holds up in the later rounds as well. That's another thing you got to keep an eye on. But again, slight edge on Cornelossi, and let's see how she performs against the UFC newcomer. All right, in the next fight, we got Jeff Molina taking on Qileng Ayori. Jeff Molina, a lot of you guys are probably familiar with him from the Dana White's Contender Series show. Had a big win over Jacob Silva. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with Jacob Silva as well, a tough fighter. Molina did enough to pull that fight off. Looked good in it. Got the unanimous decision. A lot of you guys know, Molina trains with some of the best in the game. He brushes shoulders with Krause and those boys, at Glory MMA Fitness. I've seen some interviews with Krause talking about Jeff Molina, and he is high on him and expects big things from him. But, Krause expects that from all his guys over there. Jeff Molina, 8-2, taking on the Mongolian Murderer. I mean, what a nickname that is. I guess referring to, the rival, I guess, between the Chinese and the Mongolian. A lot of them, there's a lot of big mixed martial arts over on the Asian scene between those guys, And this guy Iori, 18-6. I was impressed with some of the fight tape that I saw on this guy. I saw him throw a flying knee that was spectacular. Completely wiped out his opponent. It was a Brazilian dude, a tough dude. Completely wiped him out with the flying knee. Iori, just the way that he carries himself in the cage. I mean, he's very light on his feet. He's very comfortable in there. It seems that he's seeing everything. He's very fluid with his striking and whatnot. The boxing can definitely be cleaned up a little bit. Not a big fan of his hands. But again, it's not so much that American style of striking. It's not that crisp boxing, walking forward. I mean, this guy, he's ready to throw kicks. He's ready to mix it up. Like I said, very light on his feet. So it's a little bit of a different style. Molina, very well-rounded fighter, has some good jiu-jitsu. He could strike himself. The line is right around a pick'em, and I feel like that's pretty accurate. I bounce back and forth with who I was going to pick in this fight. I like Jeff Molina. I like what I saw from him over there in Dana White's Contender Series. But you know what, man? The more I was, watching tape on the UFC newcomer, I don't know, man. I think I'm going to edge Iori to win this fight, the Mongolian Murderer. Again, this was a little article. Like I said, man, over in Asia, they're really starting to get things going over there. They got the Shanghai Performance Institute. This is the fighter we talked about earlier as well. Both these Chinese fighters coming out of the Performance Institute. They're getting top of the line training now. They take it extremely serious, and you see the overall game from these fighters really coming around. And I will say, back in the day, there was times I would look to fade these types of fighters, and that's just not the case whatsoever. They're way more than capable, and in fact, a lot of these fighters coming out of China and Mongolia, they're coming over and they're handling business. They're coming in, they're stringing on victories, and that's why I'm going to actually pick Iori to win the fight. I like what I've seen from him here. He's very rangy as well. He's actually going to have a 1-inch height advantage and basically an identical reach advantage. For some reason, they're going down to the 10th over here, the 69.1 reach. They have an identical reach. But watching Jeff Molina, if you're breaking down tape on him and you're watching him fight a guy like Jacob Silva is a much more smaller man, and Molina comes off like he's a fighter that, he can use his size and whatnot to really wreak havoc in the division. But that's not going to be the case here. Iori is the bigger dude here. by an inch, pretty much the same. But Iori fights very long as well, like I told you, with the footwork and whatnot. So this is going to be a tough fight for Molina. I'm taking Iori to win the fight here. I think that he's really, you know, looking to make a name for himself here. He has more fight experience, you know, with what, 24 professional fights compared to Molina's 10 professional fights. And I'm going to take Iori to win the fight there. And that fight right there should be an exciting fight. Keep an eye on that fight. I really expect that to be a good one. All right, moving up to the lightweight division. We got Zhu Rong taking on Rodrigo Vargas, another Chinese fighter that looks very impressive. You know, there's a reason why these three fighters, you know, coming out of China are getting their opportunity to fight in the greatest proving grounds in the world for mixed martial arts. You know, there's a lot of Chinese mixed martial artists, a lot more than you guys would even realize at times. You know, they are, you know, they take the game very serious over there. These are the cream of the crop, you know, coming out of there, you know, for the most part. Some of them stay on that side, but these are some of the top fighters coming out of that side of the world. And if you watch tape on Zhu Rong, you see, you know, what we're talking about here. This guy is nasty, very well-rounded. You know, the grappling, you know, the ground and pound, you see him impose on some of his opponents, finishing them, you know, stacking guys' guards, and instead of just head hunting, you know, working the body, finishing guys with body shots. You know, there's one video I broke down him, you know, he's stacking the guard, and you would love to see this more often. You know, throws a nice right straight right to the gut, knocks the air out of his opponent, and, you know, that finishes his opponent like that, you know. Again, another guy that's fighting out of the, or has put time in over at the Performance Institute over in China. A guy that, you know, out of all the three Asian fighters we just talked about, the Chinese fighters, this guy is probably the most, you know, touted as a prospect. A lot of people are very high on him, and I think it's reasonably so. This guy is talented. 17-3, 20 fights, 20 professional fights, and only 21 years old. Remember, I talked about that. You know, these look at this, 21 years old and already has 20 professional fights. Telling you, these fighters have been training from a very young age. He's coming into this fight here with a 3-inch height advantage, a slight reach advantage. He's going to have some good range and whatnot in this fight. Vargas is a, you know, Kazula. He goes by the nickname Kazula. I like that nickname. Vargas is a very tough fighter. If you guys remember, you know, he's coming off a disqualification against Brock Weaver. He looked good in the beginning parts of that fight, but you know, that knee that he threw, that was very questionable. That was one of the worst illegal knees I've seen. So, you know, this is a guy, you know, you got to wonder where his head's at in there. This guy, even if he starts to look good, he can just blow the fight by being dumb in there. I definitely think that's reasonable to say. But he does carry good power in his hands. He's a strong dude. I mean, we saw him, you know, getting Weaver down to the mat. You know, I will say this, Brock Weaver, you know, in that fight, as he looked good against Brock Weaver early, I do think that Brock Weaver was a guy that really wasn't UFC caliber. A lot of people liked his personality, his whole story and whatnot. You know, he got the upset on Dana White's Contender Series, but the only reason why he even got the contract was really, in my opinion, the whole personality that he had. He was yelling, walking out to the cage, Native American Indian. He was talking during the fight, but all he did was hold his opponent up against the cage and stomp on his foot, and he got a contract. And then, as you saw, I mean, he needs to sharpen up his game, and I think that he could still develop his game. You know, he's training over at Top Team, and you know, he bounces around a little bit, but the point I'm making, though, is, you know, I wouldn't look too much into that. We still need to see some more from Vargas, but, you know, this is a guy also who's put in some work, I believe, with Jackson's. I believe it was, I saw. But you know, only won 2 of his last 5 fights. Should have been probably 3 of his last 5. Lost to Alex da Silva in his UFC debut. Alex da Silva, a very young Brazilian prospect, kid that's a good fighter, has a lot of experience for a young age as well. Vargas, 35 years old. I'm taking Zhu Rong to win this fight, and yeah, we'll see. Obviously, you guys see I'm decently high on these Chinese prospects. And but you know, Rong's coming in at a -250, so it seems like a lot of people are agreeing with me when they're breaking down the tape on this guy. This guy is a skilled fighter, and I'll take him to win the fight here. I think that he could be a little bit more rangy. I think he'll be a little bit more polished and a little bit more of the fresher fighter in there. But you know, we'll see how that fight plays out. And again, you know, as far as the line goes, -250, a little bit high possibly. You know, Vargas is still a tough dude, and I'm not necessarily crazy about that line per se, but at the same time, the more I break tape down on this guy wrong, I'm wondering, is this guy going to come over to the UFC and start to look as good as he's looked outside it? Is he going to start to implement his game in the UFC? It'll be interesting to see. Now, in the bantamweight division, we got Danaa Batgerel taking on Kevin Natividad. This is a nice fight here. Two extremely tough fighters that bring it. This is a fight that's going to be fireworks. I'm telling you guys right now. If you guys want to talk about a possible fight of the night or a fight that's just full of action, this is one of them. I'm telling you guys right now. Danaa Batgerel, the Mongolian fighter, lost his UFC debut against Hali Alateng. That was a fight that was very close. So that was a fight that could have went either way. They were going back and forth. We talked a little bit about that earlier, the Mongolian China kind of, I don't want to say rivalry or whatnot, but, you know, they a little thing there. And that was one of those fights there. That was pretty interesting to watch back in the day. And after that, bounces back with a nice finish over Guido Connelly, a very aged fighter. But nevertheless, went in there, got the stoppage with the hands. Danaa Batgerel will march forward, and he'll throw power shots. He'll throw power hooks at your chin all day. So you see, you know, if he clips your chin, he'll put you out. Kevin Natividad is a guy that just got knocked out by Miles Johns in the first round. So the chin has definitely been tested. And, you know, Kevin is, you know, a Hawaiian fighter, you know, a fighter fighting out of Hawaii. A lot of them are known for their chins and their toughness, but is coming off that knockout. Kevin is a guy that's knocked out many of guys before as well. You know, was coming off a knockout against Karl Estrada before that over in LFA. He's put some guys out in his day too. So, you know, this is an exciting fight. I would not be surprised if either one of these guys knocks the other out. But I do expect this fight to be action-packed, you know, identical as far as the reach goes and the height pretty much. So, I mean, very, very similar framed fighters. Batgerel putting in work over at Jackson Wink over there as well. So, that's a great fight camp, of course. I know it doesn't still get the notoriety, and it doesn't have that stigma like it once did. If you guys remember back in the day, man, Jackson's was the place. It had some of the greatest fighters in the world, and obviously still does, John Jones and whatnot, but a lot of weird things have happened with Jackson's, obviously. Cowboy went over and he does his thing now in the ranch. Diego Sanchez left. A lot of little weird things, I guess, over there with Jackson Wink, but still a phenomenal camp. You know, I'm going to take Batgerel here. I like the fact that Batgerel's coming off a very big win, and I think, you know, with Natividad's coming off that loss, there's some questions there. So as far as, you know, the confidence and the energy levels, I think that favors Batgerel. But, you know, I don't think that matters so much. I think Batgerel marches forward regardless, and is just going to be pushing the pace. And just have a feeling that he edges this fight up. So, yeah, the pick is going to be Batgerel, the very tough Mongolian fighter there. And the line is right around minus 150 or so. So, not like he's a major favorite there. All right, we got Tristan Connelly taking on Pat Sabatini. Tristan Connelly, of course, the Canadian fighter, coming off a big win against Michel Pereira. That was the fight where he weathered the storm against Pereira early on and then used his overall, his well-rounded game, his grappling, whatnot, to kind of grind him out there and win that decision. Showed some good fighter IQ there. He's 14-6. He's been stringing it together. And like I said, you know, the last one being his UFC debut against Michel Pereira. That was a big win for him. 35 years old. He's no spring chicken. At the same time, you got Pat Sabatini. You know, he's 30 years old. Pat Sabatini has some real grappling credentials. A lot of people are very high on this kid. You know, he has the wrestling background to go with the jiu-jitsu game. This is a guy that puts a lot of time on in the no-gi mats. You know, competes over there. I know he trains over at Renzo Gracie over in Philly, and you know, has some Gracie brothers in his corner for this fight, or some Gracie relatives in his corner. And this is a guy that's gone out there and he's submitted a lot of guys, and you know, he can get the fight down to the mat, and he could really handle business with the grappling. So stylistically, I'm pretty excited to see how this fight plays out, because at the same time, his opponent, you know, Connelly, he does know how to fight on the mat as well. But I think Sabatini is just a whole different animal down there. And that's why, yeah, I do think Sabatini is going to show up and handle business. Even on the feet, you know, Sabatini throws some power punches. You know, has some good power in his hands. Coming in at a 2-inch height disadvantage. We don't got to reach on him, but I don't expect nothing crazy to be implemented there. I mean, maybe Connelly, if he can keep it standing, tries to pump the jab a little bit, uses striking and his kicks from the outside. But I'm on Sabatini here. You take a look at Sabatini's last loss, too, against James Gonzalez. He dislocated his arm in that fight, so that wasn't just like your typical loss there. That was more of a freak injury. And, you know, if you're wondering about the arm, if you're worried about something like that happening, if it pops out or whatnot, you know, he did go out there and, you know, string off 2 victories in a row at CFFC after that. Even pulled off a nice armbar over Jesse Stern after that. And, again, this is a guy that's a little bit more regarded coming into the UFC. This is a guy that's been talked about. And this is a guy that was training, you know, in his last fight, he was training for a guy, in my opinion, that's, you know, much more skilled than Connelly. You know, in Rafael Alves. If you guys remember Rafael Alves, he's a beast of a fighter in the UFC right now. Guy I've seen fight live. Guy that was on Dana White's Contender Series, got an early finish. He's a nasty fighter. So Sabatini's been ready to, and has been prepared to fight some top-level talent. I don't think, you know, stepping in there with Connelly is going to phase him. I think he goes out there and handles business. I think whether or not he gets the sub or maybe he just tries to grind Connelly out will be the question. So we'll see how that fight takes place. And we'll see what Sabatini's made of there, and as far as moving forward. But again, you know, Connelly was underestimated and counted out against Pereira and showed up and handled business there. We'll see if he can do it once again. You know, 35 years old. I mean, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. This is his time. You know, maybe he could use his Jiu-Jitsu, try to pull something off on the mat, and as far as his defense goes there. But I got Sabatini there. All right. Bumping up a little bit in weight classes. Going up to the middleweight division, we got Brendan Allen taking on Karl Roberson. Both these guys coming off losses and fights that were pretty big. Or they were fights that were in a pretty big spot there, right? Karl Roberson lost to Marvin Vettori. And then Brendan Allen lost to Sean Strickland, who's been really putting it together, man. Real quick, you know, just keep an eye on Sean Strickland. That's a fighter that's really looking good, and he really put it on Allen. And in fact, I was quite surprised to see that fight play out like that. Even if Allen was going to lose that fight, I did not see it going down like that. Sean Strickland cracked him up. That's what you call crackling, Sean Crackling. But maybe we got a new nickname for Tarzan there. But again, so Brendan Allen coming off a tough loss. I know Brendan Allen's been training down over here at, it says Rufus Sport MMA Academy, but no, he's been putting in work down over here at, Stanford MMA. A lot of top-notch fighters over there, but didn't look so good, you know, after going down to Stanford MMA, and didn't look as good as he used to look. I don't know, so that's something to keep an eye on. Could have just been the opponent, the matchup. You know, he beat Kyle Dawkins there. Kyle Dawkins, you guys know I'm very high on him there. And took out Tom Breeze with the ground and pound. Kevin Holland, he submitted him. So, you know, Brendan Allen's no slouch here. Karl Roberson is a guy. In the fight against Vettori, he was kind of what? He was kind of exposed on the ground too. So I want to see Allen stick to the game plan, use the grappling. I think he can handle Roberson down there. I think if he wants to, he could hold his own on the feet as well. But I think that's not the path of least resistance. You know, we saw Allen, like I talked about earlier on, get styled on the feet there against Strickland. So, you know, there's no reason why Roberson can't hurt him on the feet as well, from what I've seen. And so hopefully Allen doesn't have a chip on his shoulder and doesn't try to stand with Roberson too much. I want to see him use the grappling. I think he can get an easy victory if he does that. And other than that, you know, he could be playing with fire. Roberson is a guy that has shown flashes at times. I'm not necessarily as high on him as I've seen some of you other guys on him. At least going into that Vettori fight, people were arguing with me that he was going to take out Vettori. You know, I was all over Vettori there. Made a bunch of money on that fight. But this is a good fight here. Like I said, Allen needs to use the grappling and whatnot, and he pulls this fight off, in my opinion. We take a look at the live line. Brendan Allen is at a -130, as high as a -150. And it's not a horrible line, really. But again, hopefully he sticks to the game plan and uses the grappling there. All right, we got Dwight Grant taking on Stefan Sekulić. You know, Dwight Grant, a guy that brings it. He's a very talented fighter. He's been on the losing end of some close fights there. Of course, his last fight against Daniel Rodriguez, if you guys remember that fight, he rocked Daniel Rodriguez early in that fight, and he almost got the stoppage. And he was going into that fight as a dog. I saw some value on him in that fight. He almost stopped Rodriguez, but Rodriguez is tough as hell. He came back and he ended up finishing Grant. But Dwight Grant will bring the fight. He'll bring the fight, and he has a kind of an awkward style. He's looking to counter punch. He's using his footwork. He's throwing these kind of counter hooks as he's coming in and out. Kind of has a funky style there. Could definitely grapple, can wrestle. Well-rounded fighter. Training out of AKA. One of the top gyms in the world. He's been, really polishing his skills up. He's 36 years old. Now is his time. This is a fight that he needs to win. Taking on a guy in Stefan who lost his UFC debut against Ramazan Emeev. And in that fight, he was pretty much nullified with the grappling. That's what Emeev does. Emeev likes to hold guys up against the fence, get some takedowns, and grind out a decision. That's what he did there. When I watch footage on Sekulić before he made it to the UFC, a decently well-rounded fighter. He could strike and whatnot. And, I believe he is Serbian, correct? And this is the other fighter, Todorovic, who was a very talented fighter, even though he's coming off a loss there too. But some of the top Serbian fighters in the world. And I don't know if that's going to be enough, though. I think that Dwight Grant, if he's smart, he uses the grappling and tries to slow this fight down a little bit. But even in regards to the striking, I think that Grant should have the edge there as well. Going to have a 1-inch reach advantage, which isn't much. And this fight may play out closer than a minus 265 on Dwight Grant, though. Not necessarily crazy about that line, but I am going to pick Dwight Grant to win this fight. I think he's a little bit more polished up, and this is a fight that he should take. So, the pick will be Dwight Grant to win that fight. Oh, how about this? We got Randy Rude Boy Brown taking on Alex Cowboy Oliveira. Now we're getting to some bigger names, some more exciting type of fights, or at least more known fighters. Randy Rude Boy Brown, a guy that's been on the losing end of some really nasty knockouts. Of course, the loss to Nico Price. Yeah, Nico Price, who hit him with hammer fist from his back. That was a nasty loss for Randy. And bounced back with 2 victories. Took out Brian Barberena. Took out Warley Alves. Those were 2 big wins to bounce back with after taking that loss there. Then loses to Vincent Luque, who you guys know I'm very high in Vincent Luque, one of the more underrated fighters. Listen, Randy Rude Boy Brown brings in a great reach advantage every time he steps in. He's very rangy. He's very long for the division. 6'3". This guy, he can sit on the outside. He can outstrike fighters all day. He can win fights like that. He can get on top of you as well. He's competent with the grappling and the wrestling. He can get on top of you. He's strong in the clinch. This is a very capable fighter. I think he's a good fighter. The Jamaican fighter, one of the best Jamaican fighters in the game right now, with a couple of them out there, right? Uriah Hall, but again, American Jamaican fighters. Shout out to the Jamaicans. Uriah Hall, Aljamain Sterling, my boy Aljo. Give that belt up, Aljo. I got the memes coming at Aljo nonstop on Instagram, MMA Fortune Teller _ But now he's fighting Alex Oliveira. We talk about frames and range and whatnot. Oliveira is a long guy too for the division. Has a nice reach. Oliveira is a guy that's when he shows up, he can whoop up anybody. But he's a flaky fighter. You don't know what you're getting at times with him. And coming off that loss, to Shavkat Rakhmonov. That's a guy you need to put on your radar for sure. Believe he's Mongolian as well. But that guy is like a character out of a video game. Comes in with the feather and all that, the hat. Like he has one of those dudes that carries the hawk on him and hunts out in the Mongolian plains. But so, he got caught with that guillotine, but I think that guy Rakhmonov is serious. Before that, he takes out Peter Sabata and Max Griffin. Loses to Nicholas Dalby. A lot of people thought he won that fight. Could have been a 3-fight win streak going into his last fight. The Mike Perry fight was very close. But again, a guy that he shows up at times and other times he doesn't. I remember Alex Cowboy Oliveira. I became familiar with him. Remember him fight Gilbert Burns. He was beating the crap out of Gilbert Burns before he got armbarred. Again, making a mental error in there. Sometimes he's just flaky. Was dominating the fight and then he loses. So, which fighter will show up for Alex Cowboy Oliveira? I could easily see Alex Cowboy Oliveira clipping Randy Brown with something that's funky and putting him out. Like I said, with the Nico Price knockout we've seen on Randy Rude Boy Brown, we've seen the chin tested. Cowboy can hurt him with knees and all types of Muay Thai strikes. I could see him hurting Randy Rude Boy Brown, possibly getting a finish. But Randy is a very competent fighter as well. And he's a minus 165 favorite. So, people think that that Randy's ready to go. It's kind of a high line, in my opinion, in a matchup like this with two fighters that are very evenly matched, in my opinion. I think that Randy's going to show up and probably take this fight. I kind of edge him here. But I'm not really that confident in that pick. Really not that confident in that pick. And like I said, I could see Cowboy getting a knockout here. And I would say there's more value on Alex Cowboy Oliveira than a Randy Rude Boy Brown there. And this is one of those fights, probably will stick with Randy, but we'll see how these fighters look going into fight night. And stay tuned for an official pick on IG. But yeah, I'm gonna pick Randy Rude Boy Brown. There's a couple things that are pointing to his direction, in my opinion. 30 years old, a little bit more in his prime, a little bit more motivated, a little bit more disciplined, and I think he's hungry for a victory right now, coming off that loss. So yeah, I'll pick Randy Rude Boy Brown to win the fight. And yeah, that's the pick, Randy Rude Boy. Probably end up staying with that. But keep an eye on this fight. Another fight that has all the makings to be a very, very exciting fight. All right, we're creeping up. We're creeping up over here. Oh, now we're in the main card. We're on the main card, right? Anthony Smith taking on Jimmy the Brute Crute. You guys know I've been very high on Jimmy Crute ever since he was stringing off victories. Dana White's Contender Series, getting the victory over there. If you do your research on this guy Crute, people are very high in his BJJ and his grappling. But the striking has been looking phenomenal as well. He's going out there and he's putting it on guys, knocking dudes out or dropping dudes. You know what I mean? Just nasty striking. He's extremely well-rounded. He never steps in there as a physically imposing guy. He's never the bigger, stronger guy. It's all about the skill level with him. He goes in there as the more skilled fighter, and that's how he keeps stringing off these victories. The loss to Serkinov, he was hurting Serkinov early in that fight, made a mental mistake and got subbed. Serkinov is a talented grappler, and at the time, we're talking a year and a half ago at the time, Crute was 23 years old, 23 and a half. Very young fighter. Those are growing pains that you're going to see happen with fighters like that. I know he's learned from it. Bounces back with 2 victories, takes out Oliasejczak and takes out Bukaskis, where he knocked him out and just styled on him there. Like I said, he's not going to be the biggest fighter when he steps in there, and that's why Anthony Smith's going to have a 2-inch height advantage and a significant reach advantage, a 4-inch reach advantage. But it's nothing new. Crute has very good footwork. He knows how to close the distance. He knows how to string off his combinations. I like his striking better than Anthony's. I know Anthony could look good in there too. Anthony throws some nasty strikes, nasty kicks and knees up the middle. The punches are nice and straight. He can hit you with some nice straight shots. Anthony's a dangerous fighter. He's definitely a dangerous fighter. The thing with Anthony, though, seems to kind of fade in the later rounds. I wouldn't be surprised if Crute kind of takes over in the later rounds. I've seen some mental lapses from Anthony Smith in his fights. Lost 2 fights in a row before taking out Devin Clark. He did look good in the Devin Clark fight. Did look very good in that Devin Clark fight. Got that submission there. Obviously one of the the proteges of Krause and those guys. I know he's been bouncing around though. Looks like he's getting some training in over in Colorado, of course, as well. With the hell of a team over there, Elevation Fight Team. Always getting in top level training, no matter who he's training with, and a guy that's been around the fight game for some time. I'm going with Jimmy the Brute Crute here. I like Jimmy. Watch Jimmy in the pads real quick. So like I said, Jimmy Crute, very well-rounded. The boxing's nasty. Mixes the kicks in there nice as well. But the jiu-jitsu is really good. This guy, that's his real base, in my opinion. And you see him posted up right there with his black belt. So, and of course, Anthony Smith is no slouch with the grappling as well. So it's an interesting matchup. But I'm on Jimmy Crute. I think Jimmy Crute possibly gets the stoppage or he handles business. As long as he slows the pace down, he'll be the better fighter, in my opinion, going into the third round. And he should be able to handle business there. But Anthony Smith is a very dangerous fighter. And this is a guy that always has a chip on his shoulder, too. We saw it in the last fight against Devin Clark. He didn't like how he was set up to be a stepping stone for a guy like Devin. And he went in there, pulled off the sub, looked phenomenal. I just don't see him necessarily doing that to Jimmy Crute, a guy that's 25 years old, and you're going to start to see his game really excel as he starts to creep up to 28. And you're going to start to see it from now on, moving forward. And this is a guy that has the potential to eventually fight for a title one day, in my opinion. So I think he strings off a victory here. I'm on Jimmy the Brute Crute, minus 200. If I was taking him, maybe I went him a little bit lower than that, but I think he's going to handle business there. All right, going to the middleweight division, we got Chris Weidman taking on Uriah Hall. Chris Weidman, what do I say about Chris Weidman? The All-American, the ex-UFC middleweight champion of the world. At one point in time, this guy had so much momentum behind him. He was an undefeated fighter, took out Anderson Silva twice in a row when Silva was untouchable. I would say when he knocked out Anderson Silva that first time, I would put that up there with the top 5 fights where I've just literally was just the most exciting moments in mixed martial arts for me, watching fights live at a party and, with all my people and just going nuts. When he knocked out Silva, I was doing cartwheels off the tables. And, but at that time, he was undefeated. He was smashing dudes, knocking out Mark Munoz with elbows, taking out Anderson Silva, beating up Vitor Belfort and Lyoto Machida. And then, of course, Luke Rockhold, put an end to that. And then the Romero fight and the Mousasi fight, he went on a bad streak. Looked very good against Kelvin Gastelum, though, in that fight. He weathered the storm. The cardio is always phenomenal with Weidman. The wrestling is always phenomenal. If you don't put him away, he's going to be coming at you to the very last second of the fight. And, with the wrestling and whatnot, it really suits him to string off a lot of victories. The Omari Akhmedov fight, he was losing the beginning of that fight. He hung tough in there, and eventually, he gets the decision victory there. So he's taking on a guy in Uriah Hall. This is obviously a stylistic matchup. Uriah Hall is a striking-based fighter. He throws nasty strikes, spinning attacks. One of the most nasty knockouts we've ever seen, especially on The Ultimate Fighter. And shout out to The Ultimate Fighter show, which is coming back. We see them starting to announce fighters and whatnot, and announcing who the fighters are going to be. Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega should be a good show. I'm very excited to see it coming back. I think it's been 2 years now, 3 years since the show's been on. But again, Uriah Hall, one of the nastiest knockouts we've ever seen on the Ultimate Fighter show, that spinning heel kick. He can knock anybody out. We've seen him hit Gegard Mousasi with the spinning attack, finish him. Of course, in the rematch, it didn't go his way, but even if you're necessarily the better fighter, it only takes one shot for him to win one of those fights. Maybe against a guy that if they fought 100 times, he loses 80 of the 100 times. He'll catch you. He'll catch fighters that are supposedly better than him. He'll knock those dudes out. Definitely has the potential to knock out Weidman here. We've seen Weidman recently knocked out by Jacare Souza, Yoel Romero, finished by Rockhold. Here's the thing, though. Like I said, if Weidman can impose his will and his pace and his grappling, there's absolutely no reason why he can't get the victory here. And the line is pretty much identical. And you pick your poison here. Who do you want? You pick your choice. I'm going to go with the All-American here. I'm going to go with my boy Chris Weidman. I definitely think we could see him get knocked out here. But, let's not forget, these guys are the same age here. It's not like, Weidman's fighting some young gun. Uriah Hall's been around the block. In fact, Uriah Hall has more fights than Chris Weidman. Of course, Chris Weidman with all the wrestling experience in the world. And I'm going with my boy Chris here. Taking Chris Weidman. I want to see him close the distance, wear Uriah Hall out, and keep something in mind, too. Uriah Hall is a guy that I've seen fade and I've seen give up in fights, kind of breaks. And wouldn't be surprised if we've seen something like that here. Remember Uriah Hall when he was all hyped up, taking on Kelvin Gastelum in the Ultimate Fighter finale. Maybe something like that. I see Weidman using the wrestling and nullifying Hall there and getting the victory. That's the way I'm going with it. And I'm definitely rooting for my boy Weidman, one of my favorite fighters of all time. All right, now we get to the championship fights. Valentina Shevchenko taking on Jéssica Andrade. This is an awesome fight here. Valentina Shevchenko, in my mind, at least going into her last fight, the greatest women's mixed martial artist of all time. Did not look so good in her last fight and really kind of took a step back to Amanda Nunes, as Amanda Nunes just keeps knocking girls out. Valentina Shevchenko, like I said, didn't look that good against Jennifer Maia. But you know what? I think that she's going to bounce back here and look phenomenal. I think she's going to show up. I think she might even get a knockout over Jéssica Andrade. Now, stylistically, though, Jéssica Andrade is a very tough customer with some real strong wrestling. And if Jennifer Maia was able to do what she did in that fight, I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking Andrade can do that as well. If you remember the last fight, Shevchenko was like she typically is. She's up in the minus 12, 1300s, minus 1400s. If you saw the live line after she was losing those first couple of rounds or the first round and whatnot, the line was dropping. I remember I got in on her. I got a great line at her on the live line. And of course, she ended up rising to the occasion, still pulling off a victory, even on her off night. And that's what great fighters do. Even on their off night, they still show up and get W's. She's 20-3. I always talk about it. I think she easily won one of the two fights against Nunes, possibly both. So, a girl that could be 22-1, a girl that's just a nasty striker. We've seen her decapitate girls like Jessica I. And if you slip up, she will put you out. She's well-rounded. We've seen her pull off arm bars on Jessica Pena. So well-rounded, a complete mixed martial artist, a hitman, a killer, a savage. And that's what Jéssica Andrade is as well. Jéssica Andrade is a girl that will clip you with the hook and take your head off your shoulder. She'll spin your head around. She'll slam you on your head, like we've seen her do against Rose Namajunas. And, Jéssica Andrade is no joke here. Coming into this fight with a 3.5 reach disadvantage, a 4-inch height disadvantage. Shevchenko will be the more rangy and more rangy fighter with more skills, better footwork, better striking. I think she's more well-rounded. I think the later the fight goes on, I think she'll be the better fighter there as well. Jéssica Andrade, in my opinion, is going to have to try to hurt her, clip her with some type of hook, or just use the grappling and maybe try to steal some rounds with some takedowns and whatnot, and try to rob the champion of her belt. I just don't see it. Shevchenko is right around a minus 400 right now, which is so funny to think because that you seeing her at that line is almost it's almost questionable because she's always minus 900, minus 1200. It just seems so low for a Shevchenko, for Valentina Shevchenko, and I like Shevchenko here. I think she handles business. Like I said earlier in the breakdown, I feel confident she shows up, and I think that she might actually get a nasty knockout here. I think she's going to be extremely motivated and was training very, very hard for this fight after that last fight, the way things went for her early. I think that's only going to make her a better fighter, and I think that she's looking like she's ready to go. And I like Shevchenko here, and maybe you want to mix her up in a parlay or something like that. But I'm sure there's some of you guys out there that like Andrade as well. After you saw, how that Maia fight went with Shevchenko. But again, I don't think that that's something that you'll see. You would have seen if they fought 100 times, Shevchenko and Maia. I think that fight takes place a little bit differently for the majority of those fights. I think that Shevchenko was a little off, and I don't know all the details of what was going on, but I may be wrong. But let's see how this fight plays out, and then you guys see what I'm talking about. Watch Shevchenko show up again and do something phenomenal. Let's not forget about her history and her past, what she's done. Phenomenal fighter, one of the best champions we've ever seen. And I'm on Valentina Shevchenko to take out Andrade and possibly get that knockout. Get a finish there. The Bullet. All right, we got another women's mixed martial arts fight. We got another women's mixed martial arts championship fight. We got Weili Zhang taking on Rose Thug Namajunas. I know it annoys some of you guys, but I always bring it up. I don't know how she has the nickname Thug when she's crying when a little bit of glass gets knocked on her lap from Connor. But I always say that I don't know what kind of thugs cry when a little broken window happens on them. The thugs I know are the ones that are used to that type of stuff happening, and a lot worse than that. So she's an interesting character. Her and Pat Barry, I think they live over in the Northwest up there. It's a little bit of a different world, but You know, she's a thug in her own world, and she is a thug as far as in the octagon and on the canvas. She's a real thug there. She is a nasty fighter. She's a sniper. Her striking is some of the best striking I've ever seen in women's mixed martial arts. I put her up there with some of the best women's mixed martial arts strikers of all time. You know, we saw a little bit of that in her last fight against Jéssica Andrade. We saw some of that in the first fight, the first time they fought as well before she got finished. You know, looked great against Joanna and those fights there. Of course, an ex-champion. Remember, she was the champion. You know, even though she lost her belt to Andrade. You know, in the Andrade fight the first time around, definitely made a mental error in there holding on to that submission attempt for as long as she did before being slammed on her head. So you got to wonder mentally where she's at sometimes. I've seen her, like I said, mentally, I don't know, man. She's up and down. She said she was so happy she lost the belt. You know, it was such a relief losing the belt. Now she's saying that, you know, she wakes up and it's always in the back of her mind. Now she wants to be the champion. So a lot of hot and cold type stuff from her. You know, I mean, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that she's back on the grind and wants to be the champion again. But I somebody that's shown signs to me like that they're up and down, they don't know what they want. I do question it a little bit, especially when you're getting matched up with a girl in Weili Zhang, who is not like that at all. This is a girl that's a Terminator. This is a girl that's just strictly in there to be the champion of the world and is just training every day, strictly business. She reminds me of a Valentina Shevchenko type of fighter. This girl is a trained killer. I know she was putting some work in, I believe, in Tallahassee. Had a friend over there. This is a girl that's just all business. She's so well-rounded. Not sure if she beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk in that fight there. It was a very close fight. Could have went either way. I kind of thought Joanna won that fight, but nevertheless, a great performance. A fight of the year candidate, or I think it won the fight of the year. And she's just a phenomenal fighter. And this is a 5-round fight. You got a 5-round fight against Thug Rose Namajunas, a girl that you see kind of fade in the later rounds. Even in the last fight, she looked great against Andrade early, and then doesn't look as good in the later rounds. If something goes wrong in the fight, you know, it could completely mess up her mental in the fight, and I could see her start to just cave in and get knocked out or something. I'm definitely on Weili Zhang here. We take a look at the line. Zhang is almost a 2-to-1 favorite. I think that's reasonable. You know, if you're taking Thug Rose, you're hoping that she holds her head together and she could really showcase her skills. If she has the heart and the desire to win this fight and to be the champion, she has the skills. You know, I know a lot of you guys think that a lot of people say like Thug Rose is like a model, and I remember hearing people say this and that. She's just so attractive. Oh, I don't know about all that either, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm not the biggest Thug Rose fan in the world. I'm sure some of you guys are. Hope you don't kill me for that. But, you know, I think that Zhang is probably going to hurt her in this fight. I have a feeling. So, but again, Thug Rose is very talented too. It's a very interesting fight. But I like Zhang to handle business, who is just a straight Terminator and is trained and put on a mission to go in there and take these girls out. Like she's a straight Terminator, like a robot, just ready to kill. And there's no emotion, there's no, you know, in your feelings type of stuff with her. So, and real quick too, Zhang will have a 2-inch reach disadvantage and a 1-inch height disadvantage, which, you know, Namajunas is rangy for the division, but I just don't see that being any type of issue at all. All right, that takes us to the main event. Thank you guys for rolling with me here. You guys know the deal, man. Please like this video. Please subscribe if you guys have not already. I appreciate all you guys. Catch me on Instagram, MMAFortuneteller_. Shoot an email to me if you guys want, MMAFortuneteller@gmail.com. Catch me on Twitter, the MMA Teller. Not over there as much, of course, but, you know, we will have a good amount of official plays going into this card, and this will be a solid one here. I feel great about this card. And that leads us to the main event. We got Kamaru Usman taking on Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. This is the rematch, of course. Remember now, Jorge Masvidal took the last fight on days' notice and still put up one of the better fights against a guy in Kamaru Usman compared to a lot of the other guys. You know, that step in there with him. You know, being, you know, especially Gilbert Burns, who got finished. You know, well, the Colby Covington fight, let's not sleep on Colby. Colby put up the best match against Usman that we've seen. In fact, I thought Colby was winning that fight going into the 5th. He was winning the 5th round. That was the round that was going to decide the fight, but Usman dug deep and he took that fight. You know, Usman now, of course, he's not training with a lot of the guys he used to train with. He's over there in Colorado now, Team Elevation with Trevor Whitman and those boys. And, I mean, what can we say since going over there? He looked phenomenal in his last fight against Gilbert Burns. Does he look even better in this fight against Masvidal? I don't think so. I think that Masvidal is going to be way more prepared for this fight. I know you guys know the narrative with this fight. You know, now Masvidal has a full camp, this and that. I think that that's accurate. I think that there's a lot of substance to that belief. You know, Masvidal's putting in a full fight camp, working the takedown defense and working, you know, getting off the cage, and so he could implement his boxing and striking where he can outpoint Usman or maybe hurt Usman with some type of switch strike, you know, one of those nasty strikes like he caught Darren Till with or something like that. Gamebred, you know, he's the man. I'm a big fan of Gamebred. Been watching him since his Strikeforce days, since Bodog, all that stuff, man. You know, he's been around the block forever. A very underrated fighter. He's a nasty fighter. Take a look at the resume. This guy has wins over a lot of big names. There's a fight that he should have had a win that he didn't get against Ali Quinta. Definitely should have won that fight. Puts in training with the best of them. One of the staples of the American top team. I don't know. I think that he's going to look better in this fight than he did in the last fight. The only thing is Usman has been looking phenomenal coming off that win against coming off that win against Burns where he was able to hurt him really bad with the jab. I don't think he could do that against Masvidal. Masvidal would see that jab coming. You can quote me on that. I don't think he hits him with the jab the same way he did to Burns. Burns is very aggressive and he was walking into that. Masvidal has excellent head movement and he's a more natural boxer. And this fight will be more difficult for him, just like the last one was more difficult for him than the Burns fight was. Even though Burns did hurt Usman early, you remember that he clipped him a little bit. So saying all that, I do think that Masvidal is a lot more live in this fight than the last fight. But you guys know I'm gonna go with Usman to win this fight. Just, you know, breaking down tape on that last fight when they threw down, Usman was able to control him so much against the octagon. I could see a little bit more of that. I know Usman's still working on his game too, so he'll be even a little bit more polished up with his striking than the last time around. He's constantly evolving and working on his game. But I think the X factor here will be the grappling and you know, the cage control and just being the stronger fighter. You know, look at here. We've got Gamebred fighter saying, nope, you'll see soon. 10 days away and still. Look at Gamebred. Nope, you'll see soon. I love it. I love the confidence from Masvidal. I hope Masvidal gets a knockout. We talked earlier about celebrating and going crazy. I might be doing cartwheels if Masvidal gets the knockout. But at the end of the day, I got Usman to win this fight. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter and the more refined machine here. And the pick will be Kamaru Usman. Take a look at that live line real quick for you guys. Usman is right around a minus 440, 410. Line is high if you feel very confident about it. Maybe I recommend that you guys mix it up in a parlay, maybe with Shevchenko or something like that. Or if there's something else you feel very confident in. So that's the route I'm going there, right? All right, guys. That's going to wrap up this episode. And like always, I appreciate you guys. Special shout out to you guys that hung around for this entire video. Much love to you guys. I hope you guys all have an amazing week. I know you guys will be ready to throw down Saturday when the fights are on. Have the grill ready. Have the drinks ready. You guys can catch me on Instagram for sure this upcoming weekend. I'll be on Instagram with the stories. I try to always get on Instagram with the stories typically for these fight nights, but of course, you know, I got a life. Sometimes I got other things going on, but of course I got the fights in the background, but I can't always sit there and chirp in front of everybody I'm around and whatnot. But this weekend, it's a big fight night, and catch me on Instagram, MMA Fortune Teller _. Give me a follow. If you guys are interested in working with me with some picks, reach out to me. Much love to all you guys. And on that note, signing out. The Teller. MMA Fortune Teller.
The Teller.